today's webinar. I'm Maria Timon-Sammer. I'm the Chief Executive at Charity Digital, and I'll be your host today. I want to welcome all of you, and I'd love if you would introduce yourselves in the chat session and say where you're coming from, where you're joining from. First, a very quick introduction to Charity Digital. Assume because you're here, you have heard of us, but our mission is to help other charities to increase their impact for their beneficiaries by being more digital. So our focus is really on all things digital. And today we're going to be focusing on finance. Pardon me. So today's session is around 5 ways that charities are automating finance to save time, stay compliant, and to focus on impact. And I'm joined today by Alex from the account executive at AccountsIQ, and he's going to talk us through their software and how it helps to solve these problems. Some of the topics we'll cover today include 5 common themes and challenges that charities are facing, how to fix them with automation, how to simplify SORP and trustee reporting, smarter ways to manage restricted and unrestricted funds, why charities are moving forward beyond legacy systems and manual processes and workarounds, and what a modern charity finance system looks like in 2025, because we all know technology is evolving very, very quickly. Before we hand over to Alex today, I just cover a couple of housekeeping things. As I mentioned, you're very welcome to put your question, introduce yourself in the chat, please, and put your questions in there at any point, and Alex will take them at the end of the session. We're also recording the session, so you don't have to worry if you miss any parts of it, so that it will be uploaded in the next week or so you have full access to it again on demand. And any slides that are shared today and any resources that we refer to will be shared with you as well. Closed captions are available for today's session. To enable these, in the bottom of the Zoom window, click the up arrow, and there's a button next to closed captions, show subtitle. During the webinar, as I mentioned, please feel free to ask lots of questions. Ideally, we'll take them at the end unless there's a theme or a challenge that's popping up that you're struggling to understand as we go through that would enhance your the benefit you get from the session. If someone else asks a question that resonates with what you're thinking about, please do hit the thumbs up emoji, and that will upvote it automatically. And finally, if you do encounter any sound or any vision issues, please let us know in the chat and we'll do our best to resolve them. I'm having some problems today with my Wi-Fi, so it is entirely possible. I think it's the rain. Without further ado, let me hand over to Alex and look forward to the session. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Maria, and thanks for everybody for joining the call today. So again, my name's Alex, and I'm one of the account executives here at AccountsIQ, and I specialise helping charities transition on from whatever form of software they're using, predominantly entry solutions or on-premise solutions, onto a more sophisticated, powerful cloud-based platform. So we completely appreciate today, in 2025, finance leaders are under a lot of pressure. They need to deliver the relevant reports to the relevant people at the right time. And we know that there is that high pressure from funding environments, as we can see over here, the determination to do the best possible work for their service users. A lack of time undoubtedly is always a key challenge for anybody in those finance teams, especially given the kind of gravity of that kind of, I like to call it kind of tedious work or a little bit mundane. So hopefully you'll be able to revolutionize those processes by moving on to a more, as mentioned, sophisticated form of finance and accounting software. What we've noticed in the space is that the landscape is completely changing, unfortunately. I'm not too sure if this resonates with anybody on the call, but funding is unfortunately kind of dropping. And the expectation is still there, or there is even more of an expectation. And obviously the regulation piece is always going to be there, and we can completely appreciate that. So the key challenges that we're finding, we completely appreciate that finance teams are tasked with kind of complex tasks and operations, lots of heavy manual work, data entry, spending hours on Excel. And their teams obviously reflect the areas that hold them back the most in terms of efficiency. So we asked the question, what one of those processes can be automated? Selecting the right system is imperative, so moving to a cloud-based platform that's going to drive further efficiencies, being able to integrate with other forms of software is very, very important. And as you can see here, if you take the long-term view of the next 5 to 10 years, this will really help you consider as to whether or not changing the system is going to be suitable based on the growth of the charity and the direction in which that charity is working towards. We completely appreciate that the coding structure, depending on what system the charity is using, can be a bit of a mess. So kind of moving to a new system gives you guys the opportunity to kind of clean up shop. At AccountsIQ, we have a 3-tier chart of accounts where you'd have your category followed by a subcategory, and then you'd have the GL codes that would sit underneath the sub. Pretty much gives you a much more organized look and feel to your chart of accounts from the get-go. And then in addition to that, we then have a 6-dimensional analysis structure, so an extra 6 parts of the business that you'd like to further analyze. And in our experience, obviously that SORP element tends to be one of those dimensions where you're going to be able to tag your restricted, unrestricted, and designated analysis codes to particular transactions. Onboarding automation, so being able to move from one system could create a high level of risk, as we know. To avoid those risks materializing, we do need to identify what these would be ahead of time to make sure the project is delivered to ensure the continuity of these areas. So in short, we always want to make sure that when we're onboarding businesses and charities and not-for-profits onto our software, that's done in the most thorough way possible. At AccountsIQ, we have an in-house implementation team. All of our onboarding agents are qualified accountants, and we take a very thorough approach to ensure that those risks are minimized and the transition is pretty much as smooth as could be. With CSAT scores of 98 and 99% for the last few years, we feel like we do a good job in terms of onboarding charities onto the software. And time, so we completely appreciate that time is one of the key aspects. It's almost like, I'm not too sure if you guys would agree with me, there's so much things to do in the day. Sometimes you don't feel like you have enough time in the day to carry out the tasks that needed. So streamlining those processes can make huge impact, especially those processes which we know are very, very kind of time consuming. So to be able to streamline those processes and give your finance team more back to focus on growth and, more important things is the direction in which we'd like to go down going forwards. So from insight to action, so to review your data ecosystem, that's really, really important because it's not just about the finance and accounting software that you're using, it's also about what other forms of software that you're using, like payroll systems, donation platforms, CRM systems, so on and so forth. And in an ideal world, you'd like to ensure that those systems would be able to integrate and work cohesively with the finance solution. I always say that the finance system is that kind of integral cog, if you could imagine, and you'd have all those systems like your payroll systems, CRM systems, all kind of feeding off that big cog in the middle, using that analogy. Tighten controls without slowing down. So at AccountsIQ, we have fantastic controls. We appreciate controls, and security is incredibly important in the sector. So being able to grant or restrict access to particular parts of the system to finance teams, having those controls in place, having really good approval workflows in place is pretty vital. AI safety. So at AccountsIQ, we have a slightly kind of different stance in where we're going with AI. We appreciate there's a kind of huge, massive buzzword at the moment, and I think lots of systems are trying to incorporate AI. And sometimes the way that some companies, it's not just finance and accounting platforms, it could be CRM platforms, it could be almost like a pretty mini ChatGPT. Can you, help me out with X, Y, or Z? But that's not the approach that we're going to be taking here at AccountsIQ. We completely appreciate that, it's very sensitive data within the finance and accounting platforms. So we're going to be spending our time more focusing on using AI in the system, but to automate processes and have a much more kind of conservative approach when it comes to the sensitivity of the information in the finance system. And then to reimagine reporting as storytelling. Yeah, look, we really want to kind of broaden the financial insights, not just that being a finance team thing. With that just being, we want to broaden that to ensure that different people in the business have access to specific reports, specific dashboards that are relevant to their role, and having that business use license that we call it here at AccountsIQ would mean that you could give your trustees, senior leadership teams access to AccountsIQ, where they'd be able to log into the finance system with their own unique credentials. The head admin user could then grant or restrict access again as to what reports or dashboards would be relevant based on their role. Hopefully it means that they're going to have access to that critical information, and that will drive better business decisions going forwards. I think this is exactly what I meant by that kind of cog analogy. I'm glad we've got this slide here because, as mentioned, I definitely consider the finance system as that kind of critical key cog, the critical cog as part of your finance tech stack, if you would. And as we can see over here, we've got different parts of your processes or different systems that you're going to be using to carry out those processes that you're going to be using on a daily basis. And it would be nice, I'm sure you'd all agree, if that could kind of be integrated and plug into your finance system, driving more automation and more streamlined processes. And in short, you pretty much do need to be on a cloud-based system to do that. So moving to the cloud is pretty important if you'd like to have that kind of tech ecosystem within your finance team. Financial controls that build confidence. So purchase orders, purchase invoices, approvals against budget lines. So when I speak with charities, I often find that they're not doing purchase orders just because they don't have that approval process in place, or if they are carrying out POs, it's in some instances done on paper or via email. So at AccountsIQ, we have a perfect purchase order to purchase invoice matching process, and we have the approvals that would be triggered after that person who would log into the AccountsIQ system. That's native to the AccountsIQ platform. We have a purchase order system. It's not just the finance team who could raise purchase orders. It could be, budget holders or trustees or those senior leadership team members who could have that access to AccountsIQ to be able to log into the platform, raise their purchase order. When they raise that purchase order, that would then trigger an approval process. We also have approvals. So if there's you can set limits. So if the purchase order is up to £50 as an example, that doesn't need to go on an approval journey. But let's say it does. We do know that charities do like to run a tight ship. So let's say that purchase order then goes on its approval process. If the purchase invoice is a perfect match to the PO, we have a perfect matching process at AccountsIQ, and the PI wouldn't then need to be approved. You do have the option, though, to also have the purchase invoice approved. So you could have the purchase order approved, then the invoice comes into the system. We obviously have OCR technology at AccountsIQ, so you could just forward those invoices straight into the system without any manual intervention. If you'd like, the purchase invoice can also then go on its approval journey, or you could have that perfect match where if the PI is a perfect match to the PO, it will just land in your item invoices in a perfectly approved status. And then we've also got a really good audit trail on those POs. The PIs, if they've been rejected, it's mandatory to leave a note. So you have to leave an explanation as to why that was done. And role-based approval hierarchies, automated workflows. So I'm looking forward to logging into the platform and showing you what the approvals look like. You can have budget holder approval steps, finance manager approval steps. We always like to say at AccountsIQ that with our approvals that we have embedded in our platform, you can really make those approvals as simple or as complicated as you like. You can have a simple 1 or 2 step approval process with 1 or 2 approvers per step, or you could have a 5 to 10 step approval process with 5 to 10 approvers in each step. And again, looking forward to sharing my screen and showing you how that works in the system. Real-time budget checks prevent overspend before it happens, of course. So the nice thing is for those people who are approving those documents, when they receive, you can approve a PO or a PI or an employee expense in 3 different ways using the platform. You could do it via the mobile phone application that we offer here at AccountsIQ, just like getting a text message. You'd receive a push notification, and you could approve or reject that PO, PI, or employee expense. The same thing goes for if you're a full system user. You could obviously approve or reject in the platform, but we also have an email approval process where that person, that budget holder who's going to be approving that purchase order, as an example, would then get their budgeted breakdown at the bottom of the email, so they can make a really nice informed decision as to whether or not it's the right thing to do to approve or reject that purchase order, purchase invoice, or employee expense. And then, as mentioned, audit trails is pretty integral, and everything that you do on the AccountsIQ platform will leave a little footprint in a good way. And then the restricted fund tracking. So again, that's established for our analysis structure that we offer here at AccountsIQ. So yeah, look, product demo. I'll kind of get straight to it. We appreciate that you guys would like to see kind of what a nice kind of cloud-based system looks like. So I've logged into this demo environment here at AccountsIQ, and I'm hoping you guys would agree a kind of nice. Oh God, where's that gone? There we go. A nice looking system, modern, slick, and if you are going to kind of upgrade your finance platform, it's always nice to know that you are kind of getting a bit of an upgrade in regards to kind of what you're looking at on a daily basis, especially if you're going to be in the system kind of hours on end each day. So as AccountsIQ, you can see we've got our main user panel over here on the left-hand side. We have our homepage. This is actually in beta at the moment. Actually, not too sure if I should really be showing this, but this is going to be live for all of our customers come Q1 next year. And it's really, really handy. As you can see, it's bespoke for the user. Depending on what the user is going to be using in the AccountsIQ platform, what parts of the system they'll have access to, they will have tiles that they're able to choose and amend. So you can pretty much customize your homepage, have all the kind of key tasks that you need to be carrying out over the course of the day. And if you do have 5 invoices to be processed, if I click this number 5, it will take me straight to our accounts payable inbox, and it will show me those 5 invoices that need to be processed. So really happy with that. And I think, lots of forms of software going in this direction where you kind of have your homepage. You've got some nice insight tiles down over here, as you can see, that shows you your top 5 suppliers and what they're overdue by, your creditor aging, debtor aging, and so on and so forth. And that'll all be completely customizable per user. We then have our favorites. Sure, you could probably appreciate nice and convenient access for the parts of the system that you're going to be using on a frequent basis. So if you want to go straight to your POs, you could go straight to those, go straight to bank rec. Again, nice and convenient navigation. We have a suite of dashboards here at AccountsIQ, and you can see we've got some purchase-related dashboards, purchase commitment, expenditure, AP-related dashboards, financial overview, working capital, P&L-related dashboards. And again, this is all completely customizable for the user. And then again, relevant reports that we're using on a frequent basis, cash flow statements, report backs, and so on and so forth. We then have our accounts receivable ledger, our accounts payable ledger. We then have our items, we have our bank, we have integrated bank feeds here at AccountsIQ. We then have our GL. For any business or any charity who is multi-entity, you're also able to carry out your intercompany transactions, eliminations and recharges in AccountsIQ. We facilitate that. And we then have our suite of reports and our suite of dashboards. I'll really quickly touch on our GL. We appreciate this is kind of the backbone of any finance system. And we have a 3-tier structure at AccountsIQ for your chart of accounts. So you have your category, you then have a subcategory, and then you have your GL codes that would sit underneath the sub. I think the best place to show you that is going to be our GL Explorer. It's probably worth mentioning that this is not our main reporting tool. In those suites of dashboards, we have over 250, in the suite of dashboards, we're about 12 to 15 of them. And in our suite of reports, we have over 250 of those. This isn't inclusive of those, but we've embedded this into our GL because we appreciate you've got very convenient access to your P&Ls, balance sheets, and trial balances. I think this is one of the most viewed screens on the AccountsIQ system. So you could look at your chart of accounts at a kind of super high level, as you can see, at category level. I then can collapse these using these buttons on the left-hand side over here, and then I can see the subcategories that sit underneath the category. Then to go one step further, so you can see it in full effect, we then can collapse the sub, and then you can see the GL codes that sit underneath subcategory. So I'm hoping you'd all agree, a much more organized look and feel to your chart of accounts just straight from the get-go. It's also really worth emphasizing that during our implementation process here at AccountsIQ, which is about 6 to 8 weeks on average, we carry it out in-house, as I've mentioned, all supports carried out in-house. Any integrations, so any other platform that you'd like to plug into AccountsIQ, again, we could build those for you and we have an in-house integration team. But when going through the implementation process, the two things that we spend the most amount of time working with you really closely on is A, reconfiguring the chart of accounts to kind of fit this structure, and B, the analysis structure. So we have a 6-dimensional analysis structure in addition to the 3-tier chart of accounts, which I'll go on to show you pretty shortly. While I'm on this page, it's also worth noting anything in blue has drill down capability, and you can see the transactions that are sitting behind those figures. You can export anything out of the AccountsIQ system really nice and easily, and I can select the format. So over here, I can export these transactions out to Excel really nice and easily. And if I wanted to export this page out of the system, or any page in the AccountsIQ system for that matter, I can select the format, PDF, Word, Excel, and I can export this out very, very easily. Now, you can hold 2 budgets in the AccountsIQ platform, so you're able to compare against different data sets. So you can compare actuals versus actuals, actuals versus a budget, and then again, you can upload a revised or reforecasted budget at any point in the year, whether or not that's quarterly, biannually, or whenever it may be, and I'll show you how to do that pretty shortly again. We then have the analysis structure here that I'm going to touch on now. So different companies, different finance systems call these things different things. So you could have tracking categories, departments. At AccountsIQ, we call them dimensions. We offer up to 6 dimensions, and underneath each dimension, you can report on an unlimited amount of elements. So I'll touch on the SORP element because we know how important that is. So if I were to select SORP, which would be one of the dimensions that we've set up in this environment, I can then select restricted, unrestricted, or designated funding. I can apply those filters, and I can now see how quickly that has changed on this report. If I wanted to then drill down into my departments, I could also do that from here. Let's select the finance team. So I could select the department, and then I can look at all of the departments that sit underneath that one dimension, apply those filters again, and we can see how dynamic that is. We completely appreciate that you might also want to drill down into particular funding sources. So again, that could potentially be one of the dimensions. You might have different donors, different grants. So if you're not too sure, you have your government grants, your local authority grants, or national lottery funding. You can have them all sitting underneath that one dimension. Again, apply those filters, and we can see how dynamic that is. So really, really nice and convenient. To go kind of one step further and show you how the analysis structure is kind of set up from our side, I'll go to that now. So again, you can have up to 6 dimensions. In this demo environment, I've set up all 6. On average, most charities in my experience tend to utilize about 3 or 4 dimensions, and that's what our average charity would utilize. But in this demo environment, I thought, no, let's use all 6 to give you as much of an insight and build as good of an example as we can. So just to reiterate, you have your 6 dimensions. If you want to have SORP as one of those dimensions, again, you can have your SORP dimension, and you can have your different sorts of fund, restricted, designated, and unrestricted funding that would sit underneath that. If you wanted to report on particular events, programs, or projects, that could then be a separate dimension, and you could have all of the projects that you'd like to report on, or events or programs that would sit underneath that separate second dimension. You might want grants, so you might want to drill down into your grants, your donors. Again, that could all sit underneath one. And then we also have region in this demo environment. We then have departments. Department's going to be pretty generic. I think we're always going to be utilizing one of those dimensions for your departments. And then in this example, we've also got funding sources. So what you're able to do from here is you're able to create multi-dimensional analysis codes that you can tag to transactions in the system. You can have a very simple 1-dimensional code using this example here that I've just highlighted. We've got designated funding. The abbreviation for that is DESIG, and I can tag that to any transaction in the system, and that will obviously identify that as designated funding. But you can go one step further. So you can have a very simple 1 or 2-step a very simple 1 or 2 dimensional analysis code, sorry. Or if you'd like, you can have a 6-dimensional analysis code. So in addition to the 3-tier chart of accounts, you'd then get a further 6 layers of analysis. So you can hopefully really appreciate how much you can really slice and dice this data. So let's say we're working on a particular project. Let's say we've got the Clean Water project over here. Let's say that we know that stems from a government grant. And as a result of that, that's going to be restricted funding. So I can tag this analysis code that's going to cover those 3 elements in one analysis code for any transaction that relates to that particular project. And next time I would like to generate or pull a report on that project, that transaction would appear. And the same goes for government grants, and the same thing would go for restricted funding. So hope that all makes sense. Sometimes I spend a little bit more time on that in the demonstration, just kind of really drill down into it, but we're pretty limited on time. So it's always good to show the other forms of automation that we offer as well. And I think when I show you a few dashboards and I show you a few reports, hopefully that will all kind of fall into place. Really simple to get your budgets in the system. You just download our budget template, populate that and upload that into the system really nice and easily. And then we also offer a nice bit of automation in regards to journaling. So again, really easy to get your journals into the platform. You might just want to download our template file, populate that and upload it into the system really nice and easily. Sometimes we appreciate you might be, there might be a specific journal. You might want to make a few amendments to that and then reprocess it. So we have the ability to copy journals. For exactly that reason, you might want to use a similar journal, copy that journal, make a handful of amendments, and then reprocess that. So really nice and easy to copy those journals. And then the nice bit of automation that we offer is in regards to these journals that you can see over here. So your standard GL journal, your prepayments, your cost accruals, your revenue accrual, your deferred revenue, and we also have one for FX reevaluation if you are multi-entity and multi-currency. But I'll use the deferred revenue one. This one tends to obviously be one of the more popular ones. So you would select a deferred revenue journal, you'd pop down your description, pop down your reference, you'd select the transaction that you'd like to defer. So I've got one here from Gift Aid, £450. Let's say that I want that recognised over the next 12 periods. So I'll pop down 12 periods over here. So as we can see, our system's calculated that to £37.50, which is now going to be recognised from October 2025 to September 2026. And at AccountsIQ, we like to use the term to set and forget. So once I process this journal, I would not need to interact with it again. So a nice bit of automation there in regards to your journaling. You're then able to code the journal accordingly. So you might know that this particular journal relates to, I'm not too sure, let's say it's restricted funding, and let's say that it's also in regards to this particular project. So I now have my multi-dimensional analysis code that I've also tagged to this journal. And then again, I like to use the term to set and forget. So the minute I push process, that would be that. Wouldn't need to interact with that one again. I'll move on to accounts payable now, actually, because we appreciate that a lot of the charities that we're helping out might not have a system that has OCR tech, or you could be using bolt-ons. And then I was speaking with a charity a handful of months ago, and they described their setup as a kind of Frankenstein of a system where they had a particular finance platform, and then they had loads of different bolt-ons, some of them for approvals, some of them for invoicing, some of them for other things. So we'd like to hope that you have kind of single source of truth by utilizing a system like AccountsIQ and having everything all under one umbrella. So during that implementation process, of course, we'll bring across your supplier accounts, and you're able to store all of the information that I'm sure you'd expect. You can obviously default analysis codes, control GL codes, GL codes, control GL codes, and analysis codes. This tends to be quite popular. If you've got a particular project that you're working on, you might want to default the analysis code for that particular supplier who's working exclusively on a particular project. You have your financial details, contacts, notes, and then you can have up to 10 custom fields if you'd like further information. And you can attach documentation like pricing agreements or contracts or whatever other supporting documentation on your supplier account, and for accounts receivable, also for your customer accounts. I'll give you a quick insight. If anyone's not doing purchase orders, but they would like to move to a system that could facilitate that, I'll give you a quick look at what that looks like using AccountsIQ's platform. So really easy to key the PO. That person would come in, they'd select the supplier, they'd select the item. Let's just say this is, I don't know, 5 laptops. They'd then be able to pop down the GL code, which is obviously defaulted. They'd then be able to pop down the analysis code. So I said 5 laptops. Let's do that. Let's do that at, I don't know, £100 a piece. And easy as pie, you'd just be able to process that purchase order. Whoever would do so would then trigger their approval process by raising that PO. During the implementation process, we'd create all of your approvers. I think what's quite a nice touch is using this example, we have Zaina over here, who's our finance manager. I, Alex, am actually, in fact, the substitute. So if Zaina, using this example, is off sick or if she's on annual leave, we don't slow down that process. So you can have substitute approvers in place if necessary. I'm just going to use the example of our purchase order as an example. So let's bring this up. And as you can see over here, you can call your workflow what you'd like. You can select auto approval. So the PO could auto approve if it's up to a particular amount. And obviously that control is completely up to yourself. And then what I also think is really nice about these processes is that you can create tolerances if a purchase order needs to be amended. So let's just say I've used that example of getting 5 laptops, right? I have a tolerance here, and let's say I've got that tolerance at £100 actually. And I forgot to buy 10 keyboards to go alongside with those laptops as an example. If I did do so and I brought an extra 5 keyboards and they're all £19.99 each, that there's a tolerance there which is up to £100, and that's a net value, so that wouldn't actually need to be reapproved. You could have that at £5, and obviously, you know, that's closer to £99, so that would obviously need to be reapproved if your tolerance is set at £5 as an example. But you could do it on gross amounts, and you can also do it on percentage. Percentage tends to be quite a popular one because obviously keeps it relevant to what it was originally approved at. Using the approval steps that you can see over here, we have a very simple 3-step approval process for these purchase orders and purchase invoices. So you can see here the first step that we've got is a budget holder step. You can see what the approval is going to be based on. So using this example, these 2 approvers are approving based on dimension. So that could be SORP, or that could be departments, or that could be projects or events or programs. And in this example, they also have an approval based on a GL code. It could be based on a supplier, and it could be based on something a little bit more technical, like an analysis code. You can see their limits, and what's also nice is you can select the decision criteria. So you could say all must approve if limits apply. Essentially, that means both of those people would need to approve that purchase order for it to progress to its next step. Or you could say anyone can approve. That's first come, first serve. That means if Alan approves that, it means business user wouldn't need to, using this example, because someone from this step has carried out that process. And then you can also select when processing the document. The second step that we have is our finance manager, being Zaina. She is approving based on a dimension. Her limit is slightly more at £5,000 to £10,000 there. If you did want another person in that step, it'd be really easy to do that. You could just push add new, and they'll be able to do that from there. And then our final step is CFO approval. That's myself, apparently, here at AccountsIQ. And you can see that my limit is £10,000 to unlimited. And I can also approve on a particular dimension. Now, what's nice with AccountsIQ, as probably mentioned a little bit earlier on, is there's lots of different ways that you can approve purchase orders, purchase invoices, and employee expenses using our system. The first way that you could do so is via our application. So you could download the AccountsIQ app, compatible with Android and iOS. And that person who's approving can approve or reject when they receive the push notification. The second way would be if you're a full system user, and obviously you could do that in the system. And then the third way that you could approve, which is definitely the most popular way to approve purchase orders, purchase invoices, or employee expenses. Sorry, let me just drag this over from my other screen, would be via email. Because what's nice with the email approval is that you get the PDF attachment of the PI, the PO, or the employee expense. You can also attach supporting documentation. So I use the example of buying those 5 laptops. I could screenshot my comparison and say, look, I've got the Dell laptops at £100 a pop. I didn't go for the Apple Macs as an example. So you can have that supporting documentation. You get line item breakdown in the body of the email, which is pretty handy because, you know, if you don't look at the attachments, you might just want to see the line item detail, and that's absolutely fine. Then you've got the analysis code. So we could say that this is the 5 laptops that relates to the IT department. It's unrestricted funding, and that could be a 2-dimensional analysis code that you could also tag to this purchase order. You have the GL code and the description, office supplies, coincidentally. I suppose it does technically kind of fall into that bracket of office supplies being a laptop. And then what's really handy, as mentioned a little bit earlier on, this is fantastic, especially for those budget holders and senior leadership team trustees who's going to be approving these POs, is they get a nice budget breakdown at the bottom of the email. So they'll be able to see what their annual budget is, what their actual spend is, committed spend, and most importantly, what their available balance is. So again, they can really make a nice and informed decision. And going back to some of the slides a little bit earlier on, it wouldn't be too late if you didn't have the budget for it, because obviously you've got those insights. So that's the approval process. That's how to raise a PO. And actually, quickly, before I go on, I always like to say this actually when I go to the workflows. You don't need to contact us. You can do if you want. When you move to AccountsIQ, you would have a customer success agent. You have your support over here. I don't have it in this demo environment, but there would be just one last option down here where I'm kind of wiggling around with the mouse. And that would be an option to book time in with your account manager. When you would move to AccountsIQ, you would have a designated account manager. They would be responsible for your accounts, and they would be your one point of contact. So you would be able to put time into their diary, and you wouldn't need to do that if you wanted to create a new workflow. You could create a new workflow as so, and you could call the workflow what you'd like, and it'd be really nice and convenient to do that. So you don't need a degree in coding to carry out these types of purposes. We encourage our charities who are utilizing our system to self-serve and do those types of processes themselves. Let's now just move on to, well, I'll go back to accounts payable actually, but I just wanted to say you can make those workflows as simple or as complicated as you'd like, and it'd be really easy for you to do on your own. So go back to the purchase orders. You'd be able to see the approval status. I can see over here where this is at. I can see who it's stuck with. If I push resubmit, that person, that approver would then receive a notification and they would know that that's still with them. So it's a nice way to give that person who's approving a little bit of a nudge in the right direction if they haven't had time to approve that quite yet. It's nice to have that Metro map view. We then have our AP inbox. We have OCR technology embedded in the platform. When we would help the charity move onto the system during the implementation process, we would configure them with a bespoke email address. You would quite simply forward your invoices into the AccountsIQ system using the bespoke email address that we had set up for you. And by doing so, that takes it straight into the system itself. As you can see, the OCR technology would populate all of these relevant fields that you could see over here. You can make this invoice as big or as small as you'd like down here in the bottom left-hand corner. And then we call this part of the process more of a quality control check for the person in the finance team to come in, have a look at the invoice, make sure that they're happy with it, make sure it's all coded appropriately. If you did want to tag that analysis code from here, you could say, yep, brilliant, designated funding and the finance team as an example, tag that analysis code. And then when you push save, that would then trigger the approval process for the purchase invoice. So a really nice automated process there. If you have a purchase order and the purchase order is a perfect match to the purchase invoice, we actually bypass this AP inbox and those purchase invoices would just land in your item invoices in an automatically approved status, as you can see. We still like the people in the finance team to have the last say and have that last control before anything's actually posted. So as you can see, you'd tick these boxes of the invoices that have been approved, and then you'd be able to post them from here. So again, just adding that extra layer of control, which we think is really important. We've got a rejected invoice down here. So as you can see, I did mention a little bit earlier on, if you do reject it, it's mandatory to leave a note. And you can say, there's a note here, please check this against the original invoice. So again, audit trail there, letting you know kind of what the history and the journey of that purchase order to purchase invoice. Now, paying your suppliers. So you would create your payment run, as I'm sure you'd expect. You'd be able to select the bank account you'd like to pay your suppliers from. Really nice, and I don't think I've mentioned this quite yet. Probably should have mentioned this a little bit earlier on, but we have customizable grid screens in AccountsIQ, so we appreciate each different user might want to see different information, and they'll be able to customize their grid screen. That isn't just for bulk payments, that's also for any part of the system that you're on. But that does tend to be pretty handy because, if you've got the relevant grid screen that, suits your workflows, it's really easy to filter using the system. So I've just typed in, I know charity media promotions have been pestering us. They've been asking us to, pay them their money, which obviously you expect. So I could just easily drill down into that relevant supplier, select the supplier in question, and obviously select all of those invoices to be paid. But when we created this screen here at AccountsIQ, we created it so that the person who's creating this payment run would never need to leave the screen itself. You can have direct access. If you did need to refer back to the supplier account as an example, did we have a discount with that particular supplier? No, we didn't in this instance. You could refer back to the supplier account without having to leave the screen. You don't need, an extra 5 or 10 tabs open. You don't need to have Excel open in the side. You can kind of do it all from one place. If you did want to refer back to the invoice itself, again, you could do that. You don't need to have that separately. You've got everything all in one place, as you can see. The system also alerts you to a few things. So as you can see, we've got an alert over here and it says this transaction is actually in dispute and cannot be selected for a bulk payment. We've got another one down here, credit on the account. Obviously, the last thing that you'd probably want to do is overpay a particular supplier. And then what's also nice is you can partially pay your suppliers. So let's take this one as an example. That's £2,900 or so. If I only wanted to pay £1,500 of that, I could do that, and then the remaining amount would then reappear on the following payment run. If you wanted to, you could select all due transactions. Pretty self-explanatory, but that would just automatically tick all due transactions. And then lastly, we've got a nice little notification over here that shows you which one of your suppliers have actually had their bank details amended. Quite a nice touch. You can see here I've got a particular user called Zaina. She logged into Charity Print Hub, the supplier in question, and on the 27th of October, at 25 minutes past 2 o'clock in the afternoon, she changed the sort code of that particular supplier. So really, really nice audit trail, which is really important, obviously. And then you can also send this bulk payments. Once it's completed, you can also send that to be approved. So you can send your bulk payment to be approved. You can select the approver, and that person would also receive a notification to let them know they've got a bulk payment that needs to be approved. Once that has been approved in our system, you can see here the status is now completed. So what you would need to do is you would need to download the payment file. You would then log in to the bank account of whoever it is that you might be banking with, and you would upload the payment file. And quite simply, that would notify your bank to pay X supplier, X amount on X day. And then what you're also able to do in one nice clean swoop is send your remittances as proof of payment. It's all really nice and easy. Slightly conscious of time, so I'll just quickly go over to bank because whenever we're helping charities move on to the AccountsIQ system, surprisingly enough, quite a lot of those charities might not have live bank feeds. It is 2025. If you're still manually inputting those details, that is a very tedious process. So one of the first things that I'd probably recommend personally, because I've spoken firsthand with lots of people in finance teams, is have a system that has integrated bank feeds. Now, really easy by using AccountsIQ to integrate your bank to connect the feed. So we have something that's embedded in our platform. It's a system called Plaid. They hold all of the licenses with all of the banks. They connect to about 15,000 banks worldwide. You would literally just be able to type in the name of the bank that it is that you bank with, and you would be able to search for that bank and obviously select that bank. That would then take you down the relevant portal to pop in your credentials and then connect AccountsIQ to the bank account really, really nice and easily. So really kind of simple process there in regards to that. By connecting your bank to AccountsIQ, all of those transactions would then feed in to the AccountsIQ platform. There's no additional cost for anything like this as well. Whenever I kind of speak to charities and they're looking at different forms of software, sometimes they say, oh, if we want bank feeds, we need to then look at this add-on, or we need to be paying extra X amount or anything along the lines of that. So I think while I'm here, And after completing the accounts payable module, it's really worth emphasizing that how we quote charities at AccountsIQ is inclusive of everything in the system. So everything that I'm showing in the system now is all one fixed price per month. We do not have transaction limits. We would not charge more if you wanted to integrate your company credit cards. You could do the same thing. You can connect as many bank accounts and as many company credit cards to AccountsIQ, and we wouldn't charge more for that process. The same thing goes for the OCR technology. We don't have any limits. If you want our OCR tech to scan 10 invoices a month, 100 invoices a month, 200 invoices a month, there is no limits. It's a one-off set fee, which is fixed for the duration of the 24-month contract. So I just thought I'd quickly mention that on the subject of that. So as you can see, all of the transactions would feed into the system. It's a very simple traffic light system where at first, if you were to move to AccountsIQ is pretty much saying, look, I've never seen this transaction before. So you would need to create a new posting. If we use the charity shop down here as an example, based in London, I would create a new posting. We automatically have the prompt for the description to be matched down here. And as you can see, recognize for future match, memorize and post. Next time a transaction comes in from Charity Shop London, it will not come in this red status. That will then change and it will come in either an amber status, which is pretty much saying, look, we're 98% sure we know exactly what this is, but we're just like a second set of eyes on it from you guys, first and foremost, or it would come into the system in a green status, which is a perfectly transaction. So it's quite funny. I normally say this in my demonstrations, but I always say that this is definitely one of the most tedious parts of some finance teams' roles. It's the kind of most simple and probably one of the quickest things for me to demonstrate by having integrated bank feeds. And again, slightly conscious of time now, so I'll just quickly move on, just show you one or two reports and one or two dashboards. In fact, maybe I'll just skip the reports for now, but I'll quickly show you what it looks like. So we have our report manager at AccountsIQ. We have over 250 reports in the system. Now that's a lot. We appreciate that no charity is going to utilize all 250 of those reports. There might be 5, 10, 15 that we're using obviously on a frequent basis. But just to give you a bit of peace of mind, we have lots of different reports for every single part of the system, any report that you could possibly imagine. Accounts receivable, aging analysis, sales analysis, accounts payable. We then have obviously aging analysis, purchase analysis. We have workflow reports, supplier inquiries, and so on and so forth. We then have bank-related reports, bank rec reports. We have GL-related reports, P&Ls. If I just click on P&L, I think we've got about 15 to 20 different type of P&L reports. Same goes for balance sheet and trial balances. We appreciate that you might want to have different information visible, different type of filters. So really try to cover off every angle to ensure no stone is left unturned. I've got some nice cash flow statement reports. And then what tends to be a fan favorite is our management report pack. These management report packs collate about 5 to 10 different reports, put it all into one, which is a really nice touch. And what's really nice is you can email these out of the system directly. I could select the format. I could say, I know I've used the example Zaina. She's a full system user in this demo environment. So I could just type in the @ sign and then Z and an A and her name pops up. And I can obviously share that with her. I could type in the subject and the message and send those directly from the platform. I could view this full screen. Just to give you a quick example on that, I'll just show you what that looks like. And I'll take one of these reports actually out to Excel. So I've got a management report back over here. I'll just show you how easy it is and how quick it is to get it out of the system. Sometimes, in our experience, we find that it takes a long time to get data out of the systems or to run reports. So hopefully you guys would agree it's really, really nice and efficient to be able to do that using AccountsIQ. We've got some KPIs on this first report. So we've got a P&L month versus budget. Probably might need to put a little bit more data in this demo environment, but we now have P&L month versus last year, a P&L month forecast. We then have our balance sheet. We've got our cash flow statement. What's really nice about these reports as well is that you don't lose that drill down functionality or the formatting. Got some nice graphs. And then you'd also have your debtors and your creditors reports as well included. So really, really nice and easy. Again, tends to be a bit of a fan favorite. If you save it and you push view full screen, what it means is you could be transacting in the platform. You can generate that report. You've received an email. Someone said, look, listen, you need to run that report for me today. You can then be a bit distracted, carry out with your daily day-to-day tasks. You can then come back to this report. Transactions have been taking place, obviously, as the day's been going on. Let's say it's now 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You can then refresh the report, and as you can see, it's now refreshed and would take all those transactions into consideration, which is quite nice. And then I think I'll just quickly show you. I think I've got a nice custom. Yeah, I've got this nice SOFA report here. So let me just kind of view this for you. This is what we I'll take this out for you full screen as well. This is a really nice report. We've got a lot of feedback, positive feedback on this. So we've got a nice SOFA report here, which obviously touched on your unrestricted funds, restricted funds, total funds. And again, you can see the different years, you can see the GL codes and the categories. And then down here at the bottom, really nice, you've got your total expenditure and then your net income as well. So that's also a fan favorite in the not-for-profit space. And then again, pretty conscious on time, and I know some of you might have a few questions, so I just want to spend 1 or 2 moments showing you our nice dashboards. So we have really intuitive dashboards here at AccountsIQ, and you're able to drill down into particular periods. You can compare against last month, last year, budget or revised budget. You can drill down, you can get really granular with these. You can drill down into GL category, subcategory. You can even drill down into specific analysis codes. And then what's probably most easy to demonstrate, just based on the timeframes that we have, is you've got your dimensions. So I've got a financial overview. I want to drill down specifically into my restricted funding, as an example. Really nice and dynamic. We can see how quickly the dashboards changed. I then might want to drill down into particular projects that are ongoing within the charities. So let's just select a handful of these at random. And now the dashboard view represents those programs, projects that I've selected. And then the same thing goes for, obviously, you need to imagine yourself how you would be able to imagine your charity setting up this analysis structure. Departments is probably always going to be one, so we could select a handful of departments. You might just want to select the one department, and again, we can see how quickly those figures change. That's just on the financial overview one. We have P&L ones, we have sales related dashboards, we have purchase related dashboards. I quite like this this P&L one. We can obviously change language and make it income versus expenditure. But if I did want to, I've got a nice little net profit split. I quite like maths at school. I quite like pie charts. So I can then have a nice little net profit split based on particular programs or projects, or based on particular departments, as an example. So really, really good insights. And we're finding that these are especially popular with all of those trustees, senior leadership team members, budget holders, and so on and so forth. I'll quickly touch on maybe the expenditure one, because you might want to see what your expenditure is based on particular projects. So again, let's just select 4 of these reports, and I can see my expenditure month to date, expenditure on the GL classification. I've got my expenditure split. Again, I can select the projects and see the expenditure split based on the project. And then the same thing goes for your purchase commitment, which we also know is a big one here. So again, you can see what's posted, what's ongoing, what's committed. And again, you can drill down at a very granular level. You could look at particular analysis codes. You could look at particular GL categories, subcategories, particular GL codes, analysis codes. And then again, if you just wanted to use that SORP element as an example, I could just select restricted funding, and I've got a nice purchase commitment dashboard view based on restricted funding. But I appreciate that I've probably spent a little bit too much time actually running you guys through these dashboards, reports, and the system. So I would probably like to maybe hand back over to Maria and see if there's kind of any pressing questions following that slide deck presentation and brief presentation of the AccountsIQ system.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you for a whistle-stop tour of very comprehensive system, but also very intuitive. It looks like, compared to back in my day when you had to define all of these reports yourself, it makes it look really easy. And obviously, as with any of these modern systems, it can be bespoke to the setup of an organization, I assume. So
yes, so that's the most critical part. Again, implementing the software, having a really thorough implementation is kind of really what we pride ourselves on here at AccountsIQ. Again, we've got CSAT scores of 98 and 99% over the last 2 years, and we feel like when charities do want to upgrade their processes and move to a nice sophisticated cloud-based platform, the most important part is definitely the setup of the software, because it's what really drives the charity's reporting end goals.
Sure. We've had a number of questions, particularly around the department setup. So, in no particular order, is there a department drop-down option? And is there a limit to the number of departments you can have?
There's yes, so in short, the answer is yes to both of those questions. So yes, you do have a drop-down option, and yes, there is no limit. So sorry, that's a bit contradictory. There is no limit
No.
to how many departments you could have that would sit underneath that department dimension. You have an unlimited amount of elements that sit underneath each dimension.
Okay. And then are the department heads limited to activities in their own departments, or can they see across function, or is that permissions driven?
It's not permission. It can be permission driven. It might not be. It's completely up to you. What I can do is I haven't done it now, but what's really nice about AccountsIQ is the customizable profiles that you could have for your users. So you can grant or restrict access as to what they can or can't do in the system. You can't grant or restrict access as to what parts of the analysis that they have. The analysis is just as broad as the kind of it's integral kind of, if you would, as to how we set up the system. But I do think that we do have on our product roadmap for the year of 2026 in Q1, you are also going to be able to restrict what users would have access to what departments and what analysis codes, if I've understood that question correctly, sorry.
I think that was the intent behind the question. Can department heads see their actuals against budget and actuals from the previous year?
Yes,
I
of
think you did
course.
show that subsequently.
Yeah, most definitely.
Great, thank you. And then I had a question. The hardest part of all of these, sorry, there was one more question from the audience. Can you do the same with expenses? For example, you showed how you can defer revenue across 12 months. Could you do the same with expenses? So, for example, allocate insurance costs across a year.
Yes, you can.
Great.
You'd be able to do that for our
Thank you.
journaling.
Fabulous. And I had a question about the setup, because that's always the hardest part of these
Yeah.
systems. And as you mentioned a few times, it's integral to how successful and how simple it is to use for the charity later. Is that something your organization helps with, the
Yeah,
implementation and the setup?
100%. We feel like we're super unique actually in that space. I don't think there's kind of any other supplier in our space that does it in-house. So we're very unique in the way that all our implementation and again supports integrations. Everything that we do at AccountsIQ is carried out in-house. If any charity would obviously like to get in touch and discover the AccountsIQ software, we have a one point of contact approach. So I would be the person who would be liaising with the charity. If AccountsIQ would be the right option for that particular charity, we'd hand over to one of our in-house senior onboarding agents. They'd be designated to that charity's account. They would be their one point of contact. We don't outsource. There's no suppliers. There's no third parties involved whatsoever. And they'd get to know the users, they'd get to know the charity, and we have very thorough discovery sessions to ensure that when we're reconfiguring the chart of accounts and the analysis structure, it's done in the best way possible.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions from? Oh, there is another question. Sorry, quite a detailed one. Currently use Sage 50, but the increasing volume of transactions is becoming difficult to manage, and also haven't incorporated budgeting into our CRM platform, but looking to do so. Use Salesforce to manage casework, monitoring and evaluation, and inbound funds and disbursement management. Does AccountsIQ support integration with Salesforce?
Yes.
Particularly the outbound funds module? And if so, how could it
Yes.
help to automate workflow around funding and disbursements and financial reporting?
Yeah,
Big question.
fantastic question. I'd say I actually saw some data analysis that was carried out a few weeks ago. So Salesforce and Beacon and a handful of other CRM platforms are by far the most commonly carried out integration in this sector. So we have, again, an in-house integration team. We can build the integrations for the charity in question. We can do that in a very simple manner, or we can do it in a very kind of complex manner to match the requirements of the charity in question. So it's part of our kind of process internally. Whoever asked that question, again, my name's Alex. I'd be more than happy to kind of take it offline and go into a little bit more detail about that one with yourself. But we'd also have integrated reporting as well. So we map all of the data that comes into AccountsIQ from the CRM in question. So you have integrated reporting that feeds in from AccountsIQ seamlessly, in from Salesforce, using that example, into AccountsIQ, sorry.
Great, thank you. Any final questions out there? No, I guess we're between people and their lunch at this point. So
Yeah,
thank you everyone for your attention. Thank you, Alex, for a very comprehensive fly through the system.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
And really, really helpful. And just as you mentioned, inviting people to contact you directly if they'd like further information. But also just talking about finance, to mention we have another session coming up in a couple of weeks, a training session on writing winning grant bids, which is always of interest, not just to the finance team, but to other colleagues across the sector where funding is very tight, as we know at the moment. So we are running that session on Wednesday, the 19th of November, if anybody's interested in signing up, and also to invite you to please share your feedback on the session, because that's the way we look to improve what we do and the types of things we present and how we deal with your queries. So thank you everyone for your time and attention. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you very much, Alex, and have a lovely holiday.
Thanks everyone. Yeah, no, thank you very much, Maria, and thanks everyone for joining. Take care. All the best.
Take care. Bye.